Happy October, you boys and ghouls. This is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back with another video, and welcome to the month of October. For the month of October, for my retro pay-per-view review, I choose to do WCW's Halloween Havoc 1997. From Las Vegas, Nevada at the MGM Grand. And it took place on October 26, 1997. On commentary, you have the team of Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Daddy. Yeah, I can't really do a good Dusty impression. But I try to do a good Dusty. But, you know, there are people who could probably do a better Dusty impression than I can. But yeah, Halloween Havoc 1997. So, the last two times I've reviewed Halloween Havoc, I've reviewed 1998, back in 2018, and I've reviewed 2000 back in 2021. So, it's 1997's turn to take the proverbial stand. So, let the trial begin. Opening contest for Halloween Havoc 1997. We have Yuji Nagata with Sonny Ono defeating the Ultimo Dragon in a really good match. So this is a really good match between Ultimo Dragon and Yuji Nagata. Like, Nagata works Ultimo Dragon's right arm really well. Like, Dragon gets his arm worked over. Like, Dragon tries to lock in the Dragon Sleeper with the bad arm and is not able to capitalize because of how excruciating the pain was. In the end, Nagata put in the armbar to get the victory and beat down the Ultimo Dragon afterwards alongside Ono. And then Ono just hands Yuji Nagata an envelope full of yen. So that's how this ends. Yes, this storyline with the Ultimo Dragon and Sonny Ono has been going on since May, since Sonny Ono betrayed Ultimo Dragon back at Slamboree. So we then cut over to WCW.com as the Disco Inferno is being interviewed by Mark Madden for his upcoming man versus woman match with Jacqueline, his intergender match with Jacqueline. You know, you have Disco Inferno, who's the TV champion. He's answering questions. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I can't hit this woman. I can't use any sort of moves on her. You know, I'm a gentleman, and I can't hit a woman. And then Jacqueline comes back, and she's chasing the Disco Inferno off. She chases off the Disco Inferno, and we will see this later on tonight, again, with the Jacqueline and Disco Inferno match that we will get into later on in the night. Our second match, we have Chris Jericho defeating Gedo. So, yeah, just like the last match, I forgot to mention Mike Tenay was joining Dusty, Tony, Bobby, and Bobby on commentary during the last match. So, he's on... Mike Tenay's on commentary during the first three matches of this show. So, Chris Jericho takes on Gedo. Basically, yes, this is a guy Jericho used to wrestle a lot back in Japan. Jericho and Gedo, you know, they know each other very well. But the reason why Jericho doesn't talk about this match particularly with Gedo was because of this top-roped, botched counter of the Frankensteiner. Jericho tries to go for a top rope Frankensteiner on Gedo, and then Gedo blocks it. And, you know, Jericho, you know, he lands so awkwardly. I'm kind of glad Jericho is alright, because Jericho, you know, he's lucky his career didn't end right then and there with that injury. Jericho was freaking lucky that he didn't have a career-ending injury that would have led to him retiring, because Jericho is still around and he's still wrestling in 2024. Let that sink in, people. Chris Jericho is still wrestling and he's still around. And yeah, Dusty even remarks about Guido, having blonde hair, saying that he looks like he got into my hair coloring kit. So apparently Dusty Rhodes has a hair coloring kit. Thanks for letting us know, Dust. We cut to backstage as Queen Deborah McMichael, who's now separated from her husband, basically is talking about how she's not an appendage to anyone and how she's got an opponent of her choosing that she is going to plan to take out, Steve Mongo McMichael, later on tonight in his upcoming match. And then Mongo comes in and says, I have paid for everything, so why don't I cancel all them credit cards and everything? I deserve to be treated with respect. And he and Deborah begin having an argument. So, nothing more, nothing less. So now we come to the third match of the show. And this is basically the most talked about match. Whenever anyone mentions Halloween Havoc 1997, they immediately point to this match as its mask versus title, as Rey Mysterio Jr. defeats Eddie Guerrero to capture the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. This is the fourth time Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio locked it up against one another. And in the past 3 altercations that Rey Mysterio had with Eddie Guerrero, this happens to be their creme de la creme. This match is so legendary. You have Rey Mysterio wrestling in a full-body spandex purple suit known as the Phantom. He's dressed up as the superhero known as the Phantom. Yeah, and wrestling in full-body spandex probably wasn't the easiest thing for Rey to do, but somehow Rey stuck it out and pulled this off. And against someone like Eddie Guerrero, like Eddie during this match, he's ripping at the mask. You're seeing all these counter-for-counter moves against each other. This was just a pure-on lucha libre, technical wrestling star masterpiece of a match. Do I think it's my favorite match from 1997? Well, I definitely would say it would definitely be in the top 3, but it's not my all-time favorite match from 1997. That honor still has to go to Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13, which took place the same year. So, yeah, I still say Bret Hart and Steve Austin kind of stole 1997 with that WrestleMania submissions match. But this one would have to be a close second or third. And yes, this match came weeks after the Hell in a Cell match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker at Bad Blood. But yeah, this match is regarded as one of the greatest title matches in wrestling pay-per-view history. But oh boy, we're gonna get into the crap now. Oh boy, the crap's gonna start flying, because there's gonna be some shit, and it's gonna stink. Next up, we have Steve Mongo McMichael taking on an opponent of Deborah's choosing. And Deborah comes out, and she brings in Alex Wright. Yes, Alex Wright, former TV champion, former Cruiserweight champion, Alex Wright. He starts doing his dancing and everything, and then it leads into the match itself, and really wasn't that good of a match. And Goldberg came out, he spears Mongo McMichael while Deborah has the referee distracted, and then puts Alex Wright on top of Mongo. Mongo gets pinned 1, 2, 3, and Alex wins the match. And basically, Alex was just caught in the middle of all this. He was just caught in the middle of all this chaos between Deborah and Steve, and then just Goldberg happened to be the real hired gun. And then Deborah hands Goldberg Steve Mongo McMichael's Super Bowl ring. Yes, you heard that right. Steve Mongo McMichael's Super Bowl ring is handed to Goldberg. Of course, before the Mongo McMichael Goldberg match, we had a promo by Eric Bischoff and Hollywood Hulk Hogan, where Eric Bischoff tried to pull Hogan out of the cage match later on tonight against Roddy Piper, because he complains that WCW is a quote-unquote unsafe working environment. I mean, talking about Sting coming down from the rafters and the cage dropping in the middle of the ring. You know, he's trying to say that I'm looking out for Hollywood safety and all for you fans. But Tony Schiavone then calls Eric Bischoff out for his shit, and Hollywood Hogan out for his shit. Of course, they don't want Bischoff and Hogan to leave just yet, because no, if they're going to leave, they should leave, but don't try to lie to us fans if you're scared. But don't worry, the cage match still happens anyway. We then come into our next match. It's man versus woman as Jacqueline defeats the Disco Inferno. I mean, it was mostly all Jacqueline during this match. Jacqueline was just pretty much beating up the Disco Inferno. Disco tries to run away, and then Jacqueline jumped on Disco's back to prevent him from getting away. The only bit of offense Disco had on Jacqueline was doing a drop toe hold on Jacqueline, and didn't really do much afterwards, because he says that he's not going to hit a girl. But still, Jacqueline still beats the shit out of him, and even does a DDT on him. But regardless, Jackie ends up getting the victory. Nothing more, nothing less. Then we get into our next title match. It's for the U.S. title, but apparently, Curt Hennig, the United States champion, kinda didn't have the U.S. title with him. So he had to borrow the newly won Cruiserweight title belt from Ray, because he didn't bring the U.S. title with him. Oh, jeez. And he's facing off against, well, Ric Flair, as Ric Flair is wanting revenge on Curt Hennig for his betrayal at Fall Brawl, after Curt Hennig had turned his back on the Four Horsemen during the War Games cage and joined the New World Order. I mean, the first half of this match started off with Flair having all offense on Hennig. He's like beating Hennig down. And then, I mean, Hennig made the biggest mistake coming out with Ric Flair's robe, as well as cutting out the sleeves on Ric Flair's robe. And Hennig still gets a beatdown. I mean, sure, Hennig does get some offense back into this match, but Flair, he gets himself disqualified. He doesn't care about wanting to take the U.S. title from Curt Hennig. He just wants to take Hennig apart. Like baseball slides into the belt, or baseball slides Hennig's face into the belt while Henning's in the Tree of Woe. And Flair, he's having referees try to restrain him. You have Conan and Vincent come out to help Kurt and bring Kurt Hennig back into the locker room area. Then we get a promo from Randy Savage talking about his Las Vegas sudden death match and about how Diamond Dallas Page is not in his league and how he's the greatest wrestler alive today. And he tells the Turner executives, to get with the program and basically make that statement to ban Sting for tonight so Hogan could face off against Piper in the cage match. Next up, we get Lex Luger defeating Scott Hall with Larry Zbyszko, the living legend Larry Zbyszko, as the special guest referee. And yes, Zbyszko comes out first with Marvelous Mark Merrow's theme. Why does he have Marvelous Mark Merrow's theme? Why is he coming out to the same music as Marvelous Mark Merrow? I definitely think it was because of the fact that I watched this show since it's part of the Peacock WWE Network merger, that it deals with the WWE Network's editing of the show. Because WWE Network edited a lot of these WCW shows, I shit you not. And you're seeing Disco come out to the same theme as Marvelous Mark Merrow. And kind of just like how it's regarded, this is also used for the show's opening as the show begins. So then Lex Luger comes out, Lex Luger comes out by himself, and then you have Scott Hall coming out with Six. Because Six has got to be Scott Hall's corner man. The NWO try to get away with all their shenanigans. Six distracts the referee for Scott Hall to do a quote-unquote to hit the Razor's Edge or the Outsider's Edge on Luger. And of course, Scott even distracted the referee for Six to get his licks in on Luger. And it led Scott to getting the victory. However, Zbyszko then decides to reverse the decision after he demands to see the replay. So, Zbyszko decides to tell them, show the replay, and he shows the replay of Six getting involved, and then commissions the match to continue, tells Hall that if he doesn't return to the ring, then he will count Hall out. But it leads to a Lex Luger victory by Lex Luger. So now Luger is the victor. So yes, so it's because of Larry Zbyszko that Lex Luger was able to beat Scott Hall. So he can get a clean victory over Hollywood Hulk Hogan and win the world title on Nitro. But he needed help from Larry Zbyszko to beat Scott Hall. Oh, and trust me, he then would later lose a pay-per-view match. He would later lose his match at Starrcade to Buff Bagwell. Man. Talk about a fall from grace when it came to Lex Luger in 1997, throughout the months of 1997. Talk about a fall from grace. Now we're getting into it. It's the sudden death match, the Las Vegas sudden death match. But before then, we got J.J. Dillon coming out to talk with Mean Gene Okerlund. And he tells Gene, I have the contract that this match will take place. And then Eric Bischoff comes out and he starts fighting and arguing with J.J. Dillon, saying, you don't have the power to do that. You can't do that. But J.J. Dillon can, because he's part of the WCW Executive Board. and will order the match to happen anyway, because the cage match will happen. And don't worry, we'll get into the cage match soon. So next up, it's the Las Vegas Sudden Death Match, baby. As the Macho Man, Randy Savage, with Elizabeth, takes on Diamond Dallas Page. So, yeah, the last 2 times Page and Savage faced off, they were in pay-per-view main events. Page won the first bout back in April at Spring Stampede. Then Savage would win their match in June at the Great American Bash in their Falls Count Anywhere match. So now, this is a Las Vegas Sudden Death match. This is basically the rubber match between Page and Savage. And this was a really good match here. A really great match. And you see weapons being used. Of course you would. You see plastic trays being used. You see the tombstones and the fake tombstones and the fake bench being used. As Savage would get powerbombed through. Well, would get body slammed through it. It's an insane match from start to finish. Savage and Page hooking it up. Liz tries to choke Page out with a cord from the camera, and then Kimberly comes out and grabs Elizabeth by her hair. She's dragging Elizabeth all the way back to the backstage. And then Hollywood Hulk Hogan comes out dressed in a Sting mask, wearing a black trench coat, comes in and waffles Page in the ribs. And yes, Page was competing on bad ribs, mind you. Savage gets the 1, 2, 3, and he wins the rubber match between him and Page. So it's Savage who ends up taking the W here. And of course, the commentators finally put 2 and 2 together to realize those were Hogan's boots, alright. Those were Hogan's boots. It was Hogan who was dressed up as Sting. Now we get into the cage match. You see Michael Buffer do the introductions for both Hogan and Piper. You see Hogan coming out without the World Heavyweight Championship. So that's right. Hogan does not come out with the world title belt. But then Piper, who's wearing a black t-shirt that says Icon, and his trademark kilt, is coming out with the belt. Even though Piper is not the champion, yet he's coming out with the championship belt. Even though the belt still has the NWO letters painted on it. And now we get into this cage match between Hogan and Piper in one of the worst, flimsiest looking cages I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life. I know it's a bar cage, but my god, the bars felt pretty flimsy. Especially when both men are thrown against it. And this match absolutely sucked. Oh boy, you had a whole bunch of guys coming out in Sting masks. Oh look, there's a Sting. There's another Sting. There's another Sting. There's so many guys coming out in Sting masks, dressed up like Sting, holding baseball bats like Sting, but they're not the real Sting. And apparently, Savage comes in to try to help Hogan by doing a double axe handle off the top of the cage. But Savage kind of just hurts himself in the process because it's a really tall drop. And wasn't able to hit Piper. Instead, he accidentally hit Hogan. But Piper gets the victory by putting the sleeper on Hogan. And Roddy Piper takes the W. He takes the victory. And then, of course, Savage and Hogan still continue to beat down Piper and chain him to the cage. They cuff him to the cage. on both sides. Savage and Hogan are beating down Piper. And then a fan comes in a Sting mask, climbs up the top of the cage and climbs down it, and then he gets beaten up. Oh, and I forgot Eric Bischoff also participated in this beatdown with Piper as well. And that's basically that. So that was Halloween Havoc 1997. Oh yes, and I forgot to mention Eric Bischoff also came out during the Scott Hall and Lex Luger match. But why even bother with talking about that, because the match absolutely sucked anyway. And of course, the main event sucked as well. Yeah, so final thoughts, I have to give this one a 6 out of 10 to be generous, because that's just being generous to this show, because we did have two of the best matches of all time on this show, but also we had to have some of the worst matches we've seen on this show. So yeah, that was Halloween Havoc 1997. But don't worry, WCW fans, my year of WCW will continue when I tackle Mayhem from 2000. That's right, I'm going to be tackling Mayhem 2000 in November. See ya!